Good morning, everyone. I'm Val Smith. I'm the Director of Corporate Sustainability at Citi, and I'm happy to be here to help you kick off this conference, and especially proud to welcome Tensie, our 12th Distinguished Citi Fellow in Leadership and Ethics. I want to open with a little background about Citi and the Citi Foundation's engagement in this space. First, Citi Foundation. Citi Foundation works to promote economic progress and improve the lives of people in low-income communities around the world. We invest in efforts in three primary areas: financial inclusion, catalyzing job opportunities for youth, and building economically vibrant cities. Citi Foundation has a more than philanthropy approach that leverages the expertise of Citi and its people to drive thought leadership and innovation. And alongside Citi Foundation's efforts, Citi's corporate sustainability efforts look for ways to catalyze business activities that generate positive environmental and social value for communities around the world. Last week, Citi announced an updated sustainability strategy and new set of goals. The goals span our three main pillars of environmental activity: environmental finance, environmental and social risk management, and operations and supply chain. We're looking for new ways to bolster our environmental performance while creating economic value, environmental value, social value. And our most ambitious goal is to lend, invest, and facilitate $100 billion in 10 years to environmental and climate positive business activities. So I've been working in sustainability for more than 20 years. And I've been out of B school for more than 10 years. And when I think about the title of this seminar, what every business school student needs to know about sustainable sourcing and financing, I think about the need for technical know-how, which we'll hear more about today, for technical know-how on the sustainability side and on the business side. And I also think about the soft skills that we equally need. I think about the need to really push ourselves to look for win-wins, so that sustainable finance is something that we're incentivized to do all the time. And Tensie Whelan has really been a leader, I think, in finding win-wins and in blending the business and sustainability worlds. She serves as the president of Rainforest Alliance. She's been involved with Rainforest Alliance since 1990, been the president or executive director since 2000. She holds a master's degree in international communications from American University and a bachelor's degree in political science from NYU. So I'm sure you're all very proud and happy to welcome her back to her home turf. And with that, I'll welcome Tensie up here to provide our keynote remarks.
Thanks so much, Val. Turn this on. There we go. It's been an honor for me to be the Citi Fellow for Leadership and Ethics, to get to know the NYU Stern community better, to have the opportunity to work with Bruce and his Business and Society program, to meet the students, and I've been lucky enough to teach a couple of classes, and really it's not teaching, it's really an engagement, and it's a lot of fun. So I want to thank both Citi and NYU Stern for inviting me to be part of your family for this year. And also to congratulate Citi. We've been working with the company for many years around sustainable investing, around their footprint, around sustainable finance, and they've also helped us get off the ground our sustainable finance program and believed in us and supported us. So we very much appreciate that. And also with NYU Stern and the Business and Society program, it's great to see that kind of focus embedded within a business school, and I think that's where business is going, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So before we get into the serious stuff, it's morning, and so we thought we'd have a little laugh together. So some of you have seen this already, but I've seen it a lot of times, and I laugh every time. So let's open it up.
You are a good person. You spend time with your family. You work out at the gym.
Come on, push.
You conserve water while showering. You like nice clothes. You give to charity. You recycle. You drive a Prius, but you use your bike when you can. You enjoy the occasional distraction at work, and you always send a card on Mother's Day. Always. But there's a part of you that tells yourself that you're not so good, that you could be doing more, that the world is falling apart at the seams, and all you've been doing is yoga. One day you see that the rainforest is being destroyed at a staggering rate of 32 million acres a year. That's the equivalent of one football field every 78 seconds. You feel bad, angry, guilty. You've been apathetic for too long. You want to do something about it. You must do something about it. Well, this is what you're not going to do.
I quit!
You're not going to quit your job, leave your family, get on the next flight to Nicaragua, take a bus to the edge of the jungle, then hoof it across rivers, lakes, and streams on a quest to the very heart of the rainforest.
Take me to the heart of the rainforest.
You're getting closer. You're almost there. You have arrived.
You're not going to ingratiate yourself with the local tribesmen, go to great lengths to earn their respect and trust.
Nope. No.
It is around now you realize you're living out the cliché gringo fantasy of becoming an honorary native and leading the resistant forces. But screw it. If they could do it, so can you.
I'm gonna save you! This guy comes over here, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna pull a zap thing, bats right through him, right over here.
You're not going to coordinate and occupy the rainforest movement, realize it's hopeless, summon the power of the gods, lead a revolution against the deforesters and their multinational employers in an apocalyptic once-and-for-all battle to save humanity, only to awaken 2 days later in an El Salvadorian hospital with 2 toes missing on your left foot.
Siri, I wanna go home.
Hobble out of Central America, up through Mexico, across the Sierra Madre, where you break down, have your first cigarette in 4 years, accidentally start a wildfire, killing off the endangered species that once served as your occupational distraction, finally make it back home, only to find you've been replaced at work by a guy named TJ, and that things at home are not what they used to be. You're not going to do any of these things, but what you can do is follow the frog. Buying Rainforest Alliance certified products ensures the future of our rainforests, so that you don't have to do the things you shouldn't do anyway. Just follow the frog.
So how'd you like that? 5 million hits, and the reason why I think is that it taps into what we're seeing as a shift in consumer interest and behavior. And there's a variety of different studies out there. This is one by Young and Rubicam, who looks at brand attributes, doing consumer research across 50 countries, 250,000 consumers each year, and that's for 20 years they've been doing this. And they've identified what they call the biggest shift ever, a spend shift, moving from mind less to mind full consumption. And in looking at the types of attributes that people are looking for in their products or services, they see people moving from things that are mysterious and luxurious and so on, to looking for brands that have attributes that are kind and socially responsible and friendly. So this is being consistently observed, not only in this country, but around the world. So in this country, they've identified 55% of people who fit in this spend shift category. And that's in red states, blue states. It's all different types of academic or economic background, but across more than 50% of the public. And across the world, we're seeing people who are saying, you know what, there's more to life around what I'm buying and purchasing, and I care about it. Another company called Havas, and they have a meaningful brands practice, has looked also at where consumers stand and found that most people wouldn't care if 73% of brands disappeared tomorrow. All right? That's important to understand that basically the way in which brands have developed to compete around basic attributes of cost and quality is no longer enough, right? And that only 20% of brands in their mind improve quality of life, which is an area that they're looking more for among brands. And what Meaningful Brands has done is said, well, you need to really move beyond the functional attributes of your product and beyond the aspirational, which is, you know, basically if I buy this car, I'll get the pretty girl, right? To meaning and purpose in your brand. I was actually at another NYU event on Friday where the head of West Elm spoke, the CEO of West Elm spoke, and he talked about having a brand with purpose. And that is what we're seeing the trend, and as business school students, really important to understand that. Another trend, also very important to understand, is that we're able to assess our ecological footprint, and we know that we're using up 1.5 planets, and we obviously don't have 1.5 planets. And so what we're seeing is that we're going to run out of water, we're going to run out of fossil fuels, we're going to run out of soil, we're going to run out of phosphate, which fertilizes our fields, and so on. So how do we begin to think about running our lives in a way, producing products and services in a way that lives within our means, just like all of us as individuals need to do? Another trend we're seeing is a growing middle class around the world, and they quite understandably want everything that other middle classes in this country and in Europe have had. So how do we supply that demand while not continuing that trend of destroying our planet? Just one example of how the growth in population and demand has impacts on our resources. Looking at deforestation, you see that the curve of deforestation really follows the population growth. And you might think, well, why do we care about trees, right? So yes, I'm the Rainforest Alliance, so I'm a tree hugger, but why should you care? You should care because they protect our water, they protect our soil, they protect our climate. And as we see more and more extreme weather events happening, as this winter is showing us, trees serve an important function for making us more resilient, both in terms of the shade they provide for against drought and hot weather, but also the way they retain soil when you've got massive amounts of rainfall. So we need to, as business people, care about trees and water and people and a variety of other things. So if we don't care about those things as a business and don't think about them, we're creating risk for ourselves. And I think increasingly companies are recognizing the risk that they bear around the sustainability of their ecosystem. And those types of risk include things like supply chain risk. So if you're in chocolate and you're sourcing from West Africa, you need to care about the environment and social issues in those countries and be part of the solution to help solve them. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to run your business in years to come. You need to care if you're in a company where you're sourcing from a garment factory that burns down and kills people. You need to care if your business is affected by lawsuits because you haven't taken care of what is happening in your supply chain, or if your profits are down because of extreme weather events impacting the delivery of your products. You need to care if your people no longer want to work for you because you have a bad reputation or because you can't recruit the smart young kids who really want to work for a company who has sustainability. And finally, increasingly, we're seeing that around the world, companies who don't demonstrate that they care about these issues and are working proactively are finding their license to operate threatened by community protests, by civil society, and ultimately by government. So what is sustainability for a company? What does it need to be thinking about? What do you need to be thinking about? Well, clearly the company's own footprint, and depending on what type of company, that footprint will vary dramatically if you're manufacturing or if you're service. But there are all the various elements: water, waste, energy, transportation, lifestyle if you have products. But then outside of your own business, there's your suppliers' footprints. What's happening down your supply chain? There's your client or consumer's footprints. So, for example, a cup of tea, the biggest part of the carbon footprint in a cup of tea is not the production, transport, manufacturing, et cetera, of the tea. It's in you boiling a full kettle of water for your 1 cup of tea, right? So thinking about that whole ecosystem is critical. So if you thought we're going to talk later about coffee and cocoa, you need to think about how is it grown, how is it produced and manufactured, how is it packaged, how is it transported, how is it marketed, how is it used, and how is it disposed of. And you're thinking, that's not my job. My job is to make money for the company, right? But these are all things that are going to affect you if you don't begin to think about them and understand what's happening with them and how you can improve them. So the traditional model in the corporate sector in the last 100 years has been around, frankly, extracting value, right? Finding as much value as you can for your shareholders and for a couple of people at the top of the company. That's not true for all companies, of course, but it is where the quarterly reporting drives you. It's where the society drives you in terms of some of the goals that we set ourselves around the American dream. But what we're seeing now is that the new corporate ecosystem is one that is really more around sharing value and creating value rather than extracting or taking value. So we need to think about that ecosystem as our employees, of course, our shareholders, of course, but also our suppliers and our customers. How can we not only think about getting our supply as cheap as possible from them, but how can we think about a way in which we're supporting them to be able to be better, more sustainable businesses or producers? And on the natural and human resource side, how do we think about not just extracting from the nutrition of the soil or the water or the trees? How do we think about giving back and improving the situation? And external stakeholders, how do we learn to manage and work with groups that are a pain like Rainforest Alliance that you want to, that actually have something to offer and help you be a better corporate citizen? So the first generation of how sustainability creates value, I think we're seeing, everybody from Walmart to Unilever, Dunkin' Donuts, a variety of different companies all being involved and working on this generation of engagement around their own footprint and their supply chains to figure out how they can reduce some of the elements that actually save them money when they reduce, and how sustainability can help them with recruitment and retention of staff, how they can increase market share and premiums through this, and also get good publicity, good goodwill through their engagement around sustainability. And we're also seeing companies find that they can have a better relationship with government from a regulatory and risk point of view if they're good corporate citizens. The next generation, moving to continue to build on that, but moving out from there, is looking at really how do I have a net positive engagement with my ecosystem? How do I unlock more value rather than just making sure that I do as little harm as possible? How do we, like Citi is planning to do, contribute $100 million into supporting businesses that will do the right thing sustainably, right? So how do we add in the business world, and we're going to hear from our speakers today about how they're doing, contributing to positive impact in their supply chains and businesses. In doing this, what we're seeing is that many companies are finding that they're unlocking innovation. They're finding new products and services and ideas as they basically redesign how they do business. So we work with Chiquita, who been growing bananas for 100 years and doing things the same way for 100 years. And through engaging and looking at things with a whole different eye, they reduced their costs by 12% a year and 27% increase in productivity working with an environmental organization. That sounds bizarre, right? How would an environmental organization doesn't know anything about growing bananas, who just cares about the people and the planet, actually help a company who really should know what they're doing around growing bananas, right? But it's because we're in a phase where we need to really think about designing production, practices, everything in a whole different way to take into account this broader ecosystem of natural resources and human capital that we need to protect. So what do I mean by a net positive impact? Just to give an example, so I mentioned it's giving more than I take. So thinking about if I have a very big carbon footprint, a lot of companies are looking at how do I be carbon neutral. But beyond carbon neutral, how can you actually generate carbon? What's the opportunity there? If I use a lot of water, not only how do I minimize my impact on water, but how can I actually help create an opportunity for there to be more groundwater in a given watershed or ecosystem? How can I protect, by planting more trees or engaging in other efforts, a situation where water loss will be a problem? Or if I'm in a service industry, where people are really critical, what do I do beyond just taking care, paying good wages to my people? How do I create more opportunities for them? And here I mentioned the Chiquita example. and we'll talk about this in more detail, but we're seeing that doing good allows you to do well, right? So there is a correlation financially. And I've been in a couple sessions with Bruce, and I always have to apologize for showing a Harvard Business School example. But Harvard Business School did a study over 28 years, or looking at 180 companies over 28 years, sustainable versus non-sustainable in their performance, and found that the sustainably focused companies really outperformed their peers over that time period. So doing good is doing well, and vice versa. So just a little bit about Rainforest Alliance. We have been around for 27 years. We work in 60 countries with about 6,000 companies. We've certified as sustainable about 14% of the world's tea and cocoa, about 5% of the world's coffee, about 7% of the world's forests. So we are working to mainstream sustainability. We work with 2.5 million producers. So we're getting to scale with these ideas in a way that shows, not just for Rainforest Alliance, but for all of our partners whom we work with, that there is proof of concept that you can indeed improve the world, right? And still work in business. So this is just to give you a sense of how we work through the supply chain. We work on land use practices, business practices, and consumer behavior. The land use level, we do training and technical assistance. Then we do auditing against sustainability standards and certification. And we work with companies to engage them with their supply chains and sourcing and communications with consumers. And then obviously, as you see from our video, we also work on reaching out to consumers directly. So let's talk about agriculture. This is something that affects all of us, food, and affects every company as well, even if you're not actually in the food business. So we're seeing, obviously, with the population growth, significant increase in demand for food. And yet we also see that agriculture is actually the biggest contributor to all kinds of nasty environmental problems. Pesticide use, soil erosion, 60% use of fresh water, largest contributor to climate change through deforestation, and also many people around the world living on subsistence salaries in unsafe conditions. So from a labor point of view, some of the lowest paid and the poorest conditions of work. For Rainforest Alliance, we work with a network of NGOs from around the world, the developing world, on a standard that is designed to really redesign how agriculture is conducted, right? Whether you're a small producer or a very large producer. And it works in a way to help you as well increase your yields, increase your net income, but also protect your resource base, provide good conditions for your workers, and also position you to be more resilient to climate change, which is what we've got here on the right. We've been, over the last couple of years, really developing more activities for farmers around how they can create resiliency, because they're seeing, like with coffee, the Roya disease and a variety of other things, they're seeing really negative impact on their yields due to climate change around the world. Just to give you a sense of the kinds of things we focus on, if you have a certified farm versus a non-certified farm, you have very often problematic practices on uncertified farms with unsafe chemical use, erosion, poor housing, poor waste management, clear cutting, child labor, polluted streams and waterways. And we work to address all of those things. So our auditors go out and look at about 90 different criteria on an annual basis to ensure that farmers or foresters or whatever the sector we're working in improves their practices. So to get into a very specific cocoa example, this is a landscape in Ghana where the yellow line is a cocoa producing area, and around it you'll see there's a national park, what's called a globally significant biodiversity area. There's some timber concessions. And you can see that the area where the cocoa has some trees, but also a fair amount of erosion. This is looking closer in, more of what you would see in the landscape, where you've got some open canopy forest, some cocoa that's grown under the shade of the trees, then cocoa with no forest, and then really degraded agricultural land that's not doing much of anything. And our goal was to come in and really help this whole region design a way to reforest key areas, increase productivity on the cocoa farms, stop the soil erosion, give them more resiliency and understanding around climate change, and work with the companies sourcing from there, in this case, Olam, a broker, and others, to bring this cocoa to market and have the market support that the work that the producers were doing. And we did training with them. We used technology. So one of the challenges that farmers have is not really knowing the borders of their farms, not knowing the land tenure issues. So we help them with that through tablets. We're also able to show them through downloading the information onto tablets for them what kinds of issues they had, what kind of soil they had, what kind of water challenges, et cetera, what the challenge was around trees. So really engaging them and helping them create governance mechanisms for the whole area. So it's just some results from this particular project. About 50,000 trees planted, close to 3,000 farmers engaged in it. They are also engaging the kids and teachers in climate education, and created a new producer group that really manages this whole area as a community. And then got increase in productivity between 15 and 30%, and about a 25% increase in income. So again, doing well, doing good. Give you another example. In Côte d'Ivoire, we had an independent study look at the farmers. We're working with hundreds of thousands of farmers there. Look at the certified versus non-certified farms. The yields were nearly 70% higher on the farms that work with Rainforest Alliance, and also similarly about 72% higher in terms of their revenue, and significantly higher in their net income, because what they also do is reduce their costs as a part of their engagement with us. We're working, and you'll hear a little bit more about this later, around financing issues, and we've been partnering with NYU Stern around an MBA challenge to help us design a fund that will help cocoa farmers be able to invest in improving the productivity of their trees. And we're really excited about that, and we'll be announcing winners, and those winners, through Stern's generosity, will be able to come to a paid internship at Rainforest Alliance for the summer. So we're excited about that. And by the way, I should have thanked Meriwether and Carly, who are sitting up here at the front, for all their hard work on organizing this event, and they're also organizing the MBA challenge, which is what made me think of it. So thank you guys. So the financing, and you'll hear from Michelle Buckles on my team a bit later, but looking at, how do we, by giving these farmers financing for longer term investments, there is financing available for short term for farmers, to invest in fertilizer, et cetera, but there's very little financing available for things like planting more and better cocoa trees over a 3-year period. And so we've looked at, the analysis of how much, when will they start making the money back? What would it require to do that? And we're excited about carrying that forward with you guys. All of this is sustained by market growth and demand for sustainable cocoa. So just to give you a sense, we'll have the new numbers for 2014 out shortly, but really a significant growth over the years in demand for Rainforest Alliance certified chocolate. We'll hear from Kip from Blummer later, and he works with Newman's Own, who's one of the companies that we work with to source certified cocoa out of the Dominican Republic. So we're also going to hear a bit from Dunkin' Donuts, who we're pleased to be working with, and just to give you a quick sense of what's happening with with coffee. You'll see on the left-hand side coffee that's grown in full sun, and coffee actually historically was grown under the canopy, the rainforest canopy. And in parts of the world, like the savanna in Brazil, it's grown open. But one of the challenges in growing it in full sun like that is that you get soil erosion, loss of wildlife habitat, actually, though they hoped for increased productivity, in many cases lower productivity, a lot more chemical use, et cetera. So our focus is on how do we bring trees back into the ecosystem, also on things like waste, very problematic on most farms around the world. So again, to sort of give you a sense of some of the changes here, Colombia, more than 500,000 small producers who have farms of less than 5 hectares each survive and support their families from coffee. We've worked with Dunkin' Donuts in Colombia, actually. And we've got a lot of forest clearing there, a lot of challenges with climate change, with this disease that's affecting the coffee there. So they've had declining production and really been investing a lot in working with us around the sustainability of their coffee. So we also had some independent studies done there looking at the environmental side of this shade-grown coffee model, and found that it supports more biodiversity, that insects and spiders, there's more of them there, which is, for those of you who don't like insects and spiders, is a good thing because it tells you that the quality of the soil is good, which is what you need for a long-term sustainable farm. And that also the waterways had significantly higher stream health indices. And that on those farms they were using septic tanks, they had solid waste collection, et cetera. And again, that their yields were going up on average 20%. So again, as business students, you might think, why do I need to know about arthropods, right? But actually, in the future, maybe you personally won't, but somebody in your company probably will need to understand about these environmental issues that will have an impact on the business. Just one more example in El Salvador, again, looking at farmers working with us had a 76% increase in yield versus the control group, which had about 22%, on average about $89 more a hectare, and in total $1 million more for the community. So again, doing the right thing, making money. And I just wanted to show you some visuals. This is a large coffee farm in Costa Rica called Aquiares. And the satellite picture on your left is 2001, and the satellite picture on the right is 2014. And you can see the little bumps. Those are all the trees that over the 13 years they've planted as part of what we're doing. On the right-hand side, again, you'll see those bumps, and here as well. And this is in an area which is very important for water generation for all of Costa Rica in the middle of the country. So, and it also has all around it a lot of wildlife, sloths and beautiful migratory birds that actually come up here in the summer that winter down in Costa Rica. So this engagement by this company and really investing in reforestation has a broader impact outside of it. So I'd like to finish with this cartoon for all of you business students, which shows a guy in a little business suit saying, yes, the planet got destroyed, but for a beautiful moment in time, we created a lot of value for shareholders. Thank you. I think I have time for one or two questions. Yeah? Any questions? Yes?
Could you talk a little bit more about your partnership with corporations? You mentioned Chiquita, for example. How involved are you in that process, and what's that partnership look like?
So we have different kinds of partnerships. We work in agriculture, tourism, forestry. So we work with forest products companies, and we also work in financial sector as well. So we work with companies, and little ones, big ones, and at all parts of the chain. So you'll hear today from Blummer, who's a cocoa importer and manufacturer, and then you'll hear from Dunkin' Donuts that buys and sells coffee as a retailer, and you'll hear from Unilever that has Lipton tea. So we work with all different elements of the supply chain, basically, and recruit those companies who are interested in working with us to ensure that they have sustainable supply chains. And as I mentioned, we work with about 6,000, but of that 6,000, a lot of them are working with us on forest products that they source, et cetera. The top 100 are the companies that are doing a lot more than that, really investing in that kind of proactive, net positive impact approach. And you'll hear from some of the companies that are really engaging that way with us today. We also, our focus is ensuring that there's real impact and change, right? We don't want to be operating with companies at a broad level of, just general principles. We want to be helping to actually change how they do business in a way that's more sustainable. So part of what we do is go out in the field and audit against what their supply chain is doing to make sure that we are seeing that there's progress being made to be more sustainable, and then we will put our seal on it and attest that it's the case. In other cases, we'll be working with companies on very specific internal projects to help them look at how they train their suppliers around sustainability issues and create policies and guidelines for doing that. In other cases, we'll engage with them and governments around broader projects like that cocoa project, where we're really trying to understand at a landscape level how we can improve the environmental and social conditions in a particular landscape. So it's quite diverse. Yes?
Hello, Drayton Hill, is on?
Yes, it is on.
Hello?
It is on.
Okay, great. I was wanting to give a little more detail about how you're able to increase the yield, say specifically the cocoa farms, without increasing consumption of your natural resources.
So increasing the yield means basically giving better management practices. So a lot of these farmers have been growing things the same way for a long time, and also sometimes using things that cost money without recognizing how much they need, right? So you can use a certain amount of fertilizer to increase your yield, but if you use too much, it costs you a lot of money and it just kind of runs off the farm. It's not useful, right? Or you can, for example, we've seen people save money by planting trees along roadways, because during the rainy season, when you don't have that, the road floods out and your crops flood out, and so then you have to go spend people time to go fix it, right? But when you have the trees in there, you have less of a problem with flooding, just as an example. You also your books and making ensuring better your inputs, so your costs and your outputs, right? Which is something that a lot of farmers aren't necessarily doing. Small farmers aren't necessarily doing. Increases the yield, and then we also include better agronomic practices. So how do you groom the tree, right? How do you prune the tree? When do you get rid of an old tree? What are the trees that are higher yields, and focus on them? So there's a bunch of agronomic practices that go along with sustainability practices. And a lot of that is done with partners, and we'll hear from one of the companies that we work with in Rwanda, about how they're working with producers on that front. Yes?
Hi, my name is Les Kalman. I'm owner of Brooklyn Dark. I want to ask you a question. Me dealing with the customers all the time, they're asking fair trade, Rainforest Alliance, and I know the difference, but do you invest in anything that let people know the difference between Rainforest Alliance and fair trade?
Okay. So I want to thank Brooklyn Dark for carrying Rainforest Alliance certified cocoa. So difference between Rainforest Alliance and fair trade. So, and there's a variety of different certification systems. So Rainforest Alliance, first of all, is an NGO that works with a lot of different projects and programs, not just a certification organization. So that's difference number one. We work across all these sectors. But then in terms of the standard, fair trade is focused on ensuring that there's a good price, and they set up fixed prices for many of the commodities that they work with. And they're interested in sort of better equity in the trading relationship, right, between the producers and the buyers, which is a very important area. We're more interested in the whole sustainable farm management to ensure that farmers actually are able to have long-term better net income, better sustainability of the farms, as well as introducing to them to the market, ensuring they get good price for their product. But we don't require a fixed price premium, and we do a lot more around the farm management and the environmental side of things than fair trade does. So it's a different approach. There are farms that are both Rainforest Alliance and fair trade, and we collaborate together. I think, do I have one more question? Yes.
First, I just want to thank you for your incredible work, revolutionizing.
Thank you.
That's great. Second question, given the increase in consumer demand, it would be interesting to hear about Rainforest Alliance growth goals across other commodities or whatever, and if there are any challenges on the supply side curbing that growth, and whether business can help solve that.
So you're asking, we're right now working on our 5-year plan. You're asking all the right questions that we're wrestling with at the moment. So we have a goal in our key commodities to get to about 20% of sustainable production with Rainforest Alliance. We have a goal of growing in cattle and palm oil, which are two areas where we've just begun to work in, to get them in the next 5 years up to 1% to 2% that we can have as certified around the world. And that's the cattle is in Latin America. It's not in the U.S., but we're working actually on a grassland standard in the U.S. with Natural Resources Defense Council. So we want to continue to grow our efforts, but we also want to add in more engagement with producers, help them communicate, learn from each other with new social media and technology, and engage them more directly with consumers. We believe that we need to do a much better job of helping the producers see the benefits, because they don't always, and help consumers understand what's behind their products so that they feel part of the solution, right? See the producers and what's happening as part of their ecosystem. We do see this trend with consumers continuing to grow, but economics, means that most people are not going to be able to pay more for products. So therefore, we need to help producers with reduction of costs, with more efficiency, with higher yields, with the expectation that it's not always going to be possible to have a premium, right, given where the world economic situation is at the moment. So I think the other area that we're seeing is a fall off or a sort of questioning about certification itself and how robust and impactful it is, which is always fair to ask, right? And so that's why we've been doing a lot of these impact studies to understand where we can improve. And we're also seeing companies begin to develop their own programs and systems, which is good as long as they're robust. And also we're seeing industries develop their own kind of standards, which again is good as long as, because they tend to be the kind of minimum baseline standard, as long as they then encourage improvements rather than just staying in one place. So all of that means that there's a lot happening. It's a space where, if I were in business school and thinking about where I was going to go in terms of where the jobs are going to be, the jobs are going to be in this space, right? In sustainability and different aspects of it around companies, because it's just, when you look at the trends, there's just no way around it. Is it going to be tomorrow? Maybe not, but it's going to be there. So for Rainforest Alliance, we want to continue to innovate, to be in the lead, to think about new ways. It's a journey, right? Sustainability is a journey. We don't have all the answers. It's relatively new. We're learning along the way, as our partners are, and it's fun and scary. So thank you. Very much appreciate your interest.